Good morning! I am Amy. Welcome to BookGirl. This is my channel where I will share with you all of the hundreds of books I am reading. Yes, I'm currently reading over 100 right now. If you could glance over there, you would see my actual currently reading bookcase. I have a currently reading bookcase. And if you will join me on this adventure, we will talk about how life imitates art and how art imitates life and how books just help us navigate and understand all of the crazy culture and crazy everything that we are experiencing. A little bit about me. I have always loved books. I grew up with a grandmother who was a first grade teacher, and so she taught me to read at a very, very young age, like 4 or 5. I learned to read on her lap in her big comfy chair, so I like my big comfy chairs to this day. And she taught me a love of reading and a love of learning. And in her house, I always felt welcomed and loved, and like when I was curled up in her arms, it was just perfectly safe and everything was good. And these stories taught me that how to navigate life and how to make friends and how to be a person. And I love that. Some of my earliest memories are reading Winnie the Pooh and the companion library books that had like two stories on one story on one side, one story on the other, like Robin Hood and The Jungle Book or Little Women and Little Men. And she would read these little books to me. They were complete and unabridged, and she would read the whole thing cover to cover and then flip it over and read another story cover to cover. I loved it. And I loved learning, and I loved listening to these stories of these people. You know, they're fictional characters, but you learn about other cultures and other worlds and other things through these lovely stories. And then as I got a little older, I started to read independently. Like I said, she taught me to read, and I was so excited. I barely remember not knowing how to read because I was so young and it was just such a big part of my life. And then when I was in kindergarten, I got viral encephalitis, and so I was down and sick for like months. It felt like, I don't know, my mom would come home with these stacks of library books, and I'd finish the stack of library books in a day, and she said, no, that's not how libraries are supposed to work. You can't do this. And so she brought me home a chapter book, thinking, oh, this will keep her entertained for a little while, and I finished that in a couple of days as well. And my first chapter book that she brought home was Samantha Saves the Day, which was the first book that I read with some nonfiction in the background. And it was so cool to learn that, hey, there's history here, and there's stuff, and there's things happening, and I can learn about the world. And so I read... So yes, I read Samantha Saves the Day, and I remember being disappointed because it was book 5 out of a series, and I thought, well, I have to start with the first book, and it's not how it worked, but it was amazing, and that started a lifelong love of American Girl books, and so we'll talk about American Girl books and go over all of those. And then I also, as I got older, I started reading on my own and read more things deeper and harder. And we'll talk about all the stages of life and the stages of reading and how books change us and how we change and grow as we read more and learn to more about who we are and more about the world. And our worldview is really shaped through the stories and the characters that we read and love. And I'm so looking forward to sharing that with you. And I will tell you about my Harry Potter experiences. We're going to talk geeky stuff. We're going to talk classic literature. I'm slowly piecing my way through the Divine Comedy right now, and I'm slowly piecing my way through Cervantes, and we'll dig into those. I read Les Miserables last year. Okay, I spent like 4 years reading Les Miserables. Took me longer to read Les Mis than it did to complete the seminary courses I was taking. So we will have a deep dive on that at some point, and we'll just dig into what these books are and how they shape us. I was a homeschooling mama for many years, and so I have a love of Charlotte Mason education philosophy and method. Through that, I discovered The Well-Educated Heart and Marlene Peterson and her Libraries of Hope website. And so my library, my home library, is cultivated around that idea of a rotation of stories and of cultures, and or it's categorized and organized in that way. And so we'll do a tour sometime and see some of the books I've read and some of the books I haven't gotten to yet, and what my home library looks like. It's big and wonderful, and I can't wait to share it with you. Um, and then we'll talk about just whatever other books come up, and as I'm reading, each month I want to share a recap, a monthly recap of these are the books that I finished this month. So I'm actually hoping in the next couple of days to get up 2 videos, one of a January recap and one of a February recap, because I want to get it all done and get it all out there and let you know these are the books that I read, these are what I liked, and these are what I didn't like, and these are the ones, there's going to be some that aren't going to stay in my library. They're going to go in my yard sale. And so, so you can see, and just because something doesn't work for me doesn't mean it won't for you, but I want to share my opinions and how these books have shaped my worldview and how I'm cultivating and curating my home library. And it's a process and it's a growth, and it's going to change again, I'm sure, before we're done. So come along and grab your favorite book, grab a notebook and a pen to jot down all the notes and all the thoughts that you have, and pull up your favorite cup of whatever. Today I have a cup of chai with my fancy book mug that my friends bought for me for my birthday, and sit back and enjoy the story. Happy reading!